Hello everyone. If we haven't met before, my name is Nelson Ferreira and I'm a tutor for several organizations. And during this live video, I would like to teach you many things like mixing colors. You're going to learn about skin shades, how to paint flesh. You're also going to deal with vegetation, grays, because gray is not what we think it is. It's not just black and white. And we'll be dealing with many other things like primary colors, for example. So the first thing I would like to show you is actually how to mix a simple gray. And it's very strange because people think that gray, it's only black and white, and it's not. So I would like to demonstrate for you. I'm going to turn the computer here. And first I want to show you an image from the Munsell book of colors. So this is the Munsell book of colors. And this book is very expensive. It costs about £1,000, so I don't recommend you buy it, or €1,000. And what this book has is that it contains all the colors that the human eye can see. So essentially, this is a sample. This is not from the expensive book, it's from the student's version, which is much cheaper, and it's the one I recommend you buy. So this question is essentially for Raji and also Nazira. And it's about, when you look at this type of image, it shows every single color that the human eye can see within this shade of red. So if you have that red there, these are all the mixes you can do with gray, black and white. And it's not possible to see anything else. So all the colors are on the moment you mix them with gray, black and white. But there is a problem. If you just do a normal gray, there is no, it's going to be bluish. And because it's going to be bluish, that means your reds will turn purplish because the gray will be bluish. Red and blue make purple. I'd like to ask you something. If you can hear me well, please click the wow button, you know, the like, but the wow, so I can see that you are listening to me and there is sound. Otherwise, I'll have to, to restart again. So nobody's clicking the wow button? Interesting, because I'm receiving lots of messages on my phone, but I don't think this is working. Okay, yes, it is. I can't answer now. I can see you, but nothing is happening. Liz, what does that mean? There's no sound? If you could get back to me, Liz, because I don't know if there's any sound. I can't answer messages on my phone now, so please don't text me on my phone. Text exclusively on Facebook. Okay, people are saying it is working. Thank you very much. So please click the wow button, all right? That would be even better. So the first thing I would like to show you is exactly how to mix gray. And you're probably saying, oh, but gray is black and white and nothing else. Like I've said before, gray tends to look bluish when you just mix black and white. So here's a black that I'm going to mix with white right now. So let's tilt this down so you can see the sheet of paper. I'll show you this later close up. So here's a bit of black. And I'm going to add titanium white, which is the whitest white we have in painting. And if you take just a smear of black and a bit of white and you start mixing them, you are going to get gray. But the thing with the Munsell book of colors is that this gray has to be more precise. You cannot use just a normal random gray to neutralize your colors. So let me show you again the reds that we were looking at. The grays, which are on this side, these ones are redder. In order to neutralize this red, you want to mix it with a neutral gray. You don't want to mix it with a bluish gray, which is the one we've just done right now with black and white. So I'm going to show you now a trick to creating a super fast neutral gray. And there's a brand of paint which I absolutely love. It's called Rublev. It's spelled R-U-B-L-E-V. And Rublev, sorry, it's an old tube, so you can't read it. Rublev makes a color that is called Roman black. And when you mix Roman black and white, especially lead white, so this is lead white also by Rublev. Lead white is toxic, so don't eat it. If you don't eat it, there will be no problems. And just don't smear it all over your skin, you know? Just have some hygiene. But the thing with Rublev is that it produces these two shades that when you mix them together, they produce pretty much a neutral black. So I'd like to show you now. This is the new shade we are going to make. I'm going to tilt the computer. So that's Roman black over there. And I'm going to use titanium white over here. Sorry, I can't answer. Guys, can you still see me? Because I just received a phone call, but I want to make sure everything is okay. Okay. So you are not listening, Elena? Maybe it's your settings, because everyone else can hear me. So check your settings, okay? So here's the mix I'm just about to do. Take a little bit of lead white, the toxic one, the one I really love, and then mix with just a little bit of Roman black. And I'm going to put this shade side by side to the old one so you can compare them. And what you can see in here, if you look close up, is that the upper shade, the one that is made with Roman black and lead white, is browner. And the lower shade is bluer. Can you see that difference? It's this brownish one that you want to use to neutralize colors. You really don't want to be using the bluish one. So technically speaking, the top one isn't brownish. It's just a pure neutral gray. And neutral colors do exist. You can measure the reflectance of any color by using a spectrometer, a colorimeter. And that means that neutral grays do exist. It's just a gray that reflects all the wavelengths with equal amounts. And like I've just demonstrated, you want to use the neutral one. You don't want to use the bluish one. So let's make an experiment. And if you have questions, you can ask the questions now on the comment section. Any questions about neutral gray only at the moment, okay? So I won't be able to answer every question, but feel free to ask only about neutral grays for the time being. Now, I would like to get started, meanwhile, with the problem of primary colors. Most people think that this is a primary red, and that's a primary blue, and stuff like that. Now, in reality, if you use this red and this blue to try to make purple, you can't. And what's astonishing is that even books, like even professional, well, they were supposed to be professional books, are still saying that some of these colors are primary, and that's just wrong. I know that back in the 19th century, when some of these books were written, artists did not have better primary colors, but nowadays we do. So it's kind of a bit ridiculous, I'd say, that so many people still use this type of red and blue for primaries. Now, what I would like to demonstrate next is I'm going to tilt the screen, and you're going to see the mix that we are about to use. So here's a bit of the pseudo primary red, which is not. It's not a primary red at all. And here's a bit of the pseudo primary blue, which is called ultramarine blue. You can only see these colors intensely if I spread them a bit more thinly, okay? And here's the red. And now I'm going to show to you, because the camera is a bit far, so you can see better. So that's the red, and that's the blue. So as you can see, the blue is a bit purplish. I don't know if that shows on camera. This is what many people think it's a primary blue, and it's not. And what happens when you mix them together? Problems. Let's try to make purple. So you put a bit of red, you put a bit of blue, you mix them together, and voila, you got brown. Wow, you didn't get purple at all because these are not primary colors. I'll explain in a second. You just got brown. Time to show you close up. And this was the glorious purple we did. That is not purple at all. It's just brown. Why is that? The reason is that this red that you see over here is actually orange. It's not red. It's a shade of red, but it's an orangey red. And also this blue that you see over here, it's actually purplish blue. So it's not a true blue. This blue is good to make purple colors, but not to make, you know, all the other shades. This blue is good. The problem was in this red. So this red was orange. And because it's orange, it will never give you a real violet. Let me show you now a real violet so you can compare with it. Time to tilt down and you can see the paper here. Just clean the palette knife. And this is now a real violet. And soon I'm gonna clean the, I'm gonna change. Now, please compare that. Compare that vibrant violet underneath. I think your phone can show now, with the browns that we just made when we thought we were mixing red and blue. There's absolutely no comparison. This is a true violet and the other isn't. So, lesson number 1 about primary colors. The primary colors are not red, blue, and yellow. That's what you learned at school, and that was wrong. The primary colors, well, one was correct. It's yellow. The yellow is good. The problem lies in the red and in the blue. Most reds are too orange, and most blues that people use as primary color, they're too purple. The real red is called magenta. That's the primary red. And the real blue, it's called cyan. This lesson is starting with a basic level so that beginners can understand what I'm talking about. Of course, more advanced artists will know that the primary colors are magenta, cyan, and yellow. I'm going to show you now those colors, and it's time to pick up a different piece of canvas because this is getting a bit dodgy. So here's a new canvas, and I'm just going to unroll this. So for primary colors, you want to use, by the way, on your comment section, please tell me if you relate to this. Who felt that you're just mixing dirty color after dirty color and you want your paintings to be vibrant and you just end up with mud? Because this is one of the reasons why that happens. The more mud you produce, the better you'll be good at it. So I think it's also important to learn how to mix vibrant, rich colors. So I've got a magenta. So Natalia, you remember very well, this is one of my favorite colors, magenta. I absolutely love it. And if you have no questions about primary colors, I would like you to ask them now about the primary colors. I'm using oils, by the way. I just saw a question. So Brenda, these are oils, but it doesn't matter. Even if you were using acrylics, the same rules apply. It's exactly the same thing. Okay, any questions here? Just a quick one. Is red brilliant in Windsor? No, the red that I was using is by Robertson. But again, it doesn't matter which brand. What matters is the hue. So if you get an orangey red, it will always be an orangey red, regardless of the brand. Natalia, you asked what brands do I recommend for neutral gray. Please watch the video because I just explained that. And it's actually a mix between Roman Black by Rublev and Lead White. So I'm going to carry on now. So this is magenta. Let me spread it thinly so you can see it. It's a very rich, transparent color. It looks like ruby pretty much. So these colors are very, very see-through and jewel-like. That's magenta, the primary red. It's slightly too purplish to be a true primary red, because I would like to tell you is we don't really have perfect primary colors. Our magenta is slightly too purplish, just slightly, a smidgen. And our cyan is also not, it's not cyan enough. It's a little bit too blue. It's not greenish enough. But they will do. And actually, if they didn't work, you wouldn't have color magazines, because all the pictures that you see reproduced in books and in magazines are just cyan, magenta, and yellow and black to save money. So that means you get all the colors if you use the primary colors, in theory. Now I'm going to demonstrate to you that that doesn't work, even with our primary colors. So you've got magenta and a bright yellow, a lemon yellow. Let me spread this for you. It's a lovely bright lemon yellow. And by the way, when you mix colors, I recommend that you use a palette knife and not a brush, because it's so much easier to clean with tissue paper. So here's a bright yellow and a magenta. And I don't know if you know the answer, but what happens when you mix magenta and yellow? You get orange. I've got a question about magenta, which is Emma. Yes, I've got here. Are all the brands universal colors? No. Unfortunately, different brands call them different names. Winsor Newton, this one is called quinacridone magenta, which is a good name because it says the name of the pigment, which is called quinacridone, and it's pigment red 122. I'll show you in a second how to read labels from tubes of paint. Unfortunately not, so you have to judge by hue. You have to look at the paint. You have to work with the paints. Don't just read the label only, although labels are very useful. I'll show you later how to do this. Now, I'm going to mix orange. So time to swap the color down. I hope you can all see very clearly. And this is a primary yellow with a primary magenta. And we got orange. More advanced artists, don't go away yet. There will be more, more interesting things to say, but this is for beginners to be able to join the conversation. So you made orange, and the orange is okay, it's pretty decent, but let's compare it now with a real orange. Let's compare it now with a super expensive orange pigment. Here's the real orange. And I'm going to spread it so you can see this better. And look what happens. Our mixed orange below looks like mud compared to the bright orange above. So answering to Jude, this was a question that you had, how to avoid mud and dirty colors. One of the tricks is to actually use vivid secondary colors. Don't just rely on your primary colors to do your mixes. I'm talking only now about garish colors at the moment. I'm not dwelling yet on the more complex muted tones. That will come later in this session. So I really want you to learn this. If you mix primary colors, you are not going to get a secondary that will be as bright as the real deal. And that's why when you get your palette, when you buy your paints, you need a strong yellow, a strong magenta, a strong orange, and then do the same for the blues, purples, and greens. So you need a real cyan blue, you need a bright green, because just yellow and blue will give you greens, but a little bit less bright than if you use a really bright green. And the same with the purple. So let me quickly show you another trick to avoid mud. And while I do that, I want to say something that it's a little bit of a provocation. The the art schools, so many people, art teachers, etc., they keep saying, oh, don't use black. Don't use black. I don't know where that came from. If those people paint better than John Singer Sargent or Rembrandt or Leonardo da Vinci, which they all used black, if they paint better than those painters, I might start listening to them, but they don't. So generally speaking, people that say don't use black are people that do not know how to paint with black. They say that black dirties colors. So when you mix a color with black, the color looks dirty. I've got two answers. First of all, you might want a dirty color. Dirty colors have their place in painting. Not everything is garish and super bright. So you might want a dirty color. And I've got also another comment. Why don't they complain that white also makes colors dirty? And that's what I want to demonstrate to you right now. In order to avoid chalky looking paintings, dirty, we're still talking about dirt, an extended lesson about dirt. In order to avoid dirt, you should also abstain from using too much white or even white at all in the lights. Let me show you. So here we are. And this is our lovely magenta. And now what I'm going to do here on the side is I'm going to take just a little bit of white and mix it in this corner with magenta. Okay. And then let me just spread the magenta a bit further so it becomes pink. And the grain of the canvas is going to show, of course, because this is a textured canvas. But nevertheless, you can see what I mean. So time to tilt this up. And let's look at the pinks. Notice how the top pink that I did right here looks chalky. It's somehow less vibrant, it's less saturated. When you look at the bottom one, it's redder. I don't know if you can see that. It will depend immensely on your computer screen and also on your phone. But definitely the bottom one, in the bits that are lighter, you know, in the thin bits, looks more vibrant than the top one that was mixed with white. Now, that's going to take me to the next bit of the lesson. In order to... Yeah, you should use black. I can see a lot of comments in here. I will go through most of your questions later on after the video. At the moment, I can just respond to a few. But one thing I would like to say is that, yeah, you're right, Manuel, shouldn't be dirty colors, should be muddy. Dirty could be something else. So it's muddy colors. Now, one thing I would like to say about color as well is that if you want your colors to sing and look vibrant, it has a lot to do with value. Let me talk again about the Munsell book of colors. So, this is for Raji, Nazira, and Elizabeth. What you have here is, if you look from left to right, you have the saturation, which in the Munsell terms you call it chroma. So that means that the colors on this side are brighter and the colors on that side are duller because they're mixed with gray. Then as the colors go up, it's got more white. And as the color goes down, it's got more black. And of course, now you know better, we are assuming that it's a neutral white and a neutral black, not a bluish one or a pinkish one or a gray, you know, it's neutral. So one thing I would like to repeat is that you can mix any of these shades down here, more subtle colors, just by mixing a bright red with a gray, which is the same tone as the red, not lighter, not darker. And that's how you create, amongst other things, flesh tones, When we get to flesh tones, I will show you how to mix flesh color. So we're talking a lot about bright colors. Let me just go through the list. Fatinha asked me a question. She asked me, what color will the rainbow be? The rainbow after this nasty virus goes away. Fatinha, certainly it's going to be very, very bright. Okay, bright color. Don't use the dirty one. The rainbow will shine like never before once this pandemic is gone. Now, in terms of questions, I've got a good one as well. Anis asked me how to read the label of a tube of paint and about light fastness. What is light fastness? High quality paints shouldn't fade, but that's not just dependent on the brand. It's also dependent on which specific pigment you are using. So for example, look at this tube over here. This one is by Mussini, made by Schminke. It's another great brand like Rublev. And what you see first is you have a square. Sorry, I'm pointing the wrong way because the image is inverted. You have a square with a line in between. If the square is totally crystal clear, that means the color is transparent. If the square has got a line, that means it's semi-transparent. If the square is black, that means the color is opaque. Do you understand? So it has to do with the covering power of the paints you are using. Sometimes you want to use transparent colors, and other times you want to use opaque colors. Generally speaking, transparent colors are better for the darks, and opaque colors are better for the lights, because opaque means that it covers well, so the light of the room will bounce back from the surface of the paint. As transparent paints, they'll absorb the light. They're more like a ruby or an emerald, you know. It's more see-through. So it's better for dark shades to keep the chroma, to keep the saturation, to keep the vivid color. Although it's dark, it's still resonant. The next step that you need to learn is how many stars do you have on the tube. So Schminke uses a system that goes between 1 star, which means it's a very fugitive color, it will fade, and 5 stars. 5 stars should mean that the color is totally permanent. This one is 4 stars. So as you can see, for artistic use, you must check the light fastness on the tube. Because Mussini, the brand I was showing you, they do many different colors, and different colors will have the different light fastness. It depends on the pigment. So if you want light fast colors by Mussini, you buy only the colors that have 5 stars or 4 stars. Don't buy anything that is 3 stars or less, because they'll be fugitive. Winsor & Newton, they do similar, but they only use from 0 stars to 3. So if there are 3 stars, it means it's totally permanent, 2 stars medium, 1 star fugitive, and if there's an F printed on the label, it's really fugitive. So it means the color will fade in just a few years. Depends on the light. So it's important to check your colors. Now, I'm going to show you, I think I'm going to show you now the skin colors, how to mix skin colors. But before, I would like you to, on the comment section, I would like you to tag really amazing portrait artist friends that you know, because afterwards I'm going through the comments, and some of those artists might be great to get in touch with, and maybe we can collaborate in the future. So if you know really amazing portrait painters, please tag them now in the comment section. And let me bring back this really expensive, super expensive Munsell book of colors. 1,000 pounds in my hand. And I'm just going to get rid of this and I'm going to open the book. Time to tilt so you can see better. And as we open the book, this is a color wheel. And the color wheel will show you which are the opposite colors. So for example, red and green, blue and yellow. By the way, these are the visually opposite colors. It's colors that we think have the most contrast when we look at them side by side. Here, you can see all the neutral grays I was telling you about. These are the absolutely neutral grays. They're not going to be greenish or brownish or pinkish, nothing like that. They'll be absolutely neutral. These are the ones that you want to use to neutralize your colors, okay? Because you don't want to change things with a color cast. And let me go to flesh tones. Question. From all the bright colors of the spectrum, you know, bright yellow, bright orange, bright red, bright purple, bright green, bright blue, etc. From all the bright colors of the spectrum, which one do you think is the closest to flesh tone? And it doesn't matter your ethnicity. This is another big surprise. People would say, oh, but pale flesh is a different color than really dark skin. Yes, but they can all be put together under shades of brown. It doesn't matter if it's light brown or dark brown. And my question is, what is brown? For beginners, brown is always, 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 without exception, a shade of orange. So a dark red won't make brown, it will make crimson, you know, red wine color. But dark orange gives brown. If the orange is yellowish, it gives a yellowish brown, like mustard. But if the orange is reddish, it gives a redder brown. But it's always orange, okay? Without exceptions. Now, let me get started with the skin tones. As you can see, some people are yellower, some people are pinker on their flesh. And as I'm approaching my shades, this is still too reddish. I'm a bit yellower. That says a lot about how long I stay indoors. Let me take a few color chips. I'm going to be between this type of color. Let me just take one out so I can show you closer together. So here's a chip out. And let me take you another one, a bit redder. Okay, now it will be easier to show you my hands. So you can see what I mean. So I'm kind of in between those colors. Oops, it's gonna slide. I'm gonna have to tilt the camera a bit more so you can see. This is way too light. And this one is a bit more correct, but it's slightly too pinkish. I am a little bit more, depends on which part of the flesh, because some bits are grayer, some bits are redder, some bits are yellower. That's just a random average, a kind of a more or less shade that is not too far off. But I want to show you first how not to paint skin tones. And this is what you should not do. Don't do this, okay? Let me take another color swatch. Have you ever seen people wearing that really cheap makeup, which is just way too bright? So when you compare this kind of skin colors with the real flesh tone, you can quickly see that the colors are just way too vivid. They're way too garish. Look at this orange, it's just pathetic. Like no real flesh tone is that orange and that bright. So, as a reminder, how do you neutralize this orange? You add it to a bit of neutral gray. Our skin is orange and gray. So I'm going to show you that in a second. Let's bring back this really dangerous canvas. It's just about to roll up and go into my sleeve, but that's okay. So if you want to mix, and I'm going to reuse some of these grays. If you take a neutral gray and add just a little smear of orange, you start getting a color that will be more and more and more like flesh tone. And I'm doing a string here, so I'm going to do from absolute gray. Let me show you close up. So this goes from absolute gray to oranger at the top. So the more at the top, the more orange it has. This would be a pretty tan skin color. And again, I repeat, different people are slightly different. They might be yellower or pinker or even greenish. So for example, I have a green undertone, which is very Mediterranean. If I don't catch sun, my skin goes slightly greenish, but technically it's still a shade of orange. It's just a very yellow orange that was mixed with gray. So now you know, use gray. You can definitely use black and white in painting. And the reason why you should not mix, for slightly more advanced painters now, the reason why you should not mix opposite colors to make your gray is because it's almost impossible to get a perfect neutral gray by using only two opposite colors. You generally need about 3 pigments. So I want to demonstrate that to you. Let's take two opposite colors from the color wheel. Something like phthalo green. Phthalo green. And what's the opposite color of green? It's going to be red. Something like a magenta or even a crimson red. So I'm going to take this magenta out, and it's time to mix the two together to make black. So each time you blend two opposite colors together, if they're both transparent, you remember that square that you saw on the tube? If that square is crystal clear and you mix two opposite colors together from the color wheel and they're both transparent, you get black. So let me show you this. And here we are. Let's take a bit of green and a bit of magenta. And voila, we got black. Or so we thought. We got black. Let me go closer. Can you see that lovely black? So who said that you can't mix black? Of course you can. Two transparent opposite colors give black if they're mixed together. But what's the problem with this black? This black will be just any other random black. It's not going to be neutral enough for you to neutralize your colors. It's going to have a tinge. It's going to have a cast. How can we see that? Let's add some white and see what happens. We're up for a disaster now. I bet it's going to be super blue. So, a bit of white. Let me clean the palette knife so you don't say I'm cheating, because it's going to be very blue. Let me just check if you can see the color. Yes, you can. And a bit of white. Let's mix this. Wow, it's super, super blue. Now, do you guys remember? It's incredibly blue. Do you guys remember what a neutral gray looked like? Let me show you again. I'm gonna scoop out from the old bits that we made with Roman black and lead white. And let's put it side by side and compare. Please look close up. The top smear is the neutral gray. The bottom is the gray we made with our black when we mixed opposite colors and white. It's super blue. Now you could say, yeah, but what about if you didn't use this magenta, but a slightly redder magenta? That is true. The gray would be more neutral. It would have been better. But nevertheless, it's extremely hard to get an exact pure gray just with two opposite colors. It's just so much easier to mix your gray first and then use that gray to neutralize any color if you want it dull. So, in terms of questions, we've got if you have questions, please ask them with question marks, okay? If there's no question mark, I don't know if it's a question, and I can't read everything. So in terms of questions, I've got another one in here, which is, so John and Angela, answering your question that you asked previously, skin tone is nothing more than a grade down shade of orange. If it's a very dark orange with a very dark gray, you get black skin. And the orange might be redder or yellower depending on the person. If you have a very pale orange, you know, like salmon, like this cheap color. I hate this color. So if you have salmon and then you mix it with pale gray, you will get a pale skin tone, like myself. Like my hands now are pale. I'm not catching any sun for a while. And as you can see, this is way too orange, is way too chromatic. It's way too bright, the color. It's too intense. So you need to dull it with pale gray. But make sure your gray is neutral. And here they are side by side. So that's the bright orange, and on the side, the same orange mixed with some gray. Does this make sense to everybody? And that takes me to the next question, which is about greens and vegetation. Shirley, that you asked this question about greens. But before I answer your question, how to paint leaves and trees and make them real, I bet lots of people in here are watching from all across the world. Please type in from which country you're watching from, because I'm very curious. And if there's enough people voting for certain parts of the world, I might do new tutorials at a different time frame, so you're not woken up at midnight, like in India now, for example. I've got many people watching from India. Thank you. And I know you're awakened past your bedtime. So about greens, I'm just going to take out the Munsell color book again. And I'm going to open and take the sheet out. It's easier to show you. Look at the huge variety of greens that you can have. It's just beautiful. And look that if you go slightly bluer now, you also have many more greens. So again, the more on your left, or on your right, sorry, the more on your right, the brighter the color will be, the more on your left, the grayer. And this is how you mix those intermediate colors. You just mix the bright color with gray. So you asked me how to paint vegetation. That's a very vast question. I want to show you even another color so you can understand what I mean. It's a very, very vast question. Different trees, they have different colors, and especially different light conditions will really change the way color looks. Is it a sunset? Is it midday light? Is it nighttime? If it's nighttime, you can paint your trees black and they'll look great. But if it's during the day under normal standard light, look also that there's also yellowish greens. I've shown you before the bluish ones. Now I'm showing you the yellowish ones. And let's go even further. Even if you take some oranges, and I'm not even talking autumn leaves yet, because that could be red, that could be pretty much any color. I'm still talking colors during the spring. So some of these very muted green, yellow oranges actually look like green, especially when you go towards the dark bits. So what I'd like to tell you is that when you paint vegetation, don't just paint it with a super bright garish green and that's it, because that's not going to work. Instead, I prefer that you combine all these different greens that you've seen. Some are going to be warmer and yellower, others are going to be bluer. Definitely a lot of gray mixed into those greens, otherwise it will look garish and too bright. A bit like plastic trees for Christmas. You know, when you buy a plastic tree for Christmas, the green is just way too plastic, it's too artificial. You don't want that. So by mixing a bit of gray, you dull that green and make it more elegant. Now, in terms of, Olga asked me a question, which is how to create volume with warm colors, cool colors, and neutrals. Olga, that question is too complex for this tutorial. I'm going to do a future video just on that, okay? So bear with me. And One thing I would like to say, back to Jude. Jude, when you asked me how to avoid dirty colors, also has to do with contrast. So even a very dirty color like this color is pretty lame and dirty. If you surround it with a very different color, like for example, a grayish blue, you know, or a grayish purple, then this dirty color will look super, super, super bright. This muddy color, like Manuel said and very well. So you can make mud look colorful if you surround that mud with other colors that offset against it. Does this make sense? It's about visual perception. It's about a visual illusion. The color in itself is pretty dull, but the context makes it bright. I would like to show you a little watercolor that I'm working on. So this is not finished by any means. It's the portrait of a little boy called Juan. It's a watercolor painting. And notice that if you look at the skin tone, so let me just pick, has nothing to do with a super bright pale salmon. Do you understand? So even in the lights, so I'm going to show you here in the lights, because you might say, oh, but that's the darks in the lights. So even in the lights, there is much more gray to paint the light skin than just a bright, vivid, pale orange. Does this make sense to everyone? So what I'd like you to say is that if you want realistic skin tones, you need to dull that orange color. And oh, Helen, you want to know more about visual perceptions? I'll do a whole video on that as well. It's just checking any questions here. Yeah, Josef Albers is an important clue. But the thing is that he's also a top painter. I would like to do a whole tutorial just on his work, because I think he's a fantastic abstract artist. Now, what I would like to conclude with, I've got two more questions in here, which I wrote before. Aha, Vanessa and Anis, they both asked me how to create mood in painting. Okay, if you studied music, more especially classical music, I would say, you have what is called the major chords and you have the minor chords. So major are usually brighter, they look happier, more cheerful, more expansive, and just more resonant. And then minor chords, which are the black keys of the piano, you know, if you play more with the black keys of the piano, the sound feels more introvert, more nocturnal. It's more intimate, and you can do exactly the same with color. Generally speaking, and this is partially cultural, so it's not going to be the same for everyone, but generally speaking, bluish colors tend to feel more minor, more introverted, or melancholy. Just think of the blue paintings by Picasso, you know, that depict poverty, and he used blue because it creates that mood. Or the Scissorhands, how do you call that film? Yeah, you know what I mean. So it has got some blue scenes where that bluish tone creates a more nocturnal feeling. To offset against that, you've got the warm colors, the colors of fire, you know, orange, red, yellow. They tend to be more energetic, more eye-catching as well. Like orange, for example, is really eye-catching. So if you're driving through a motorway and a highway and there's an announcement written in orange, you tend to see it and remember it better than any other color. And because those colors are more energetic and more vibrant, they can be used to do paintings that feel energetic and vibrant. So your choice of color has to do with the moods that you want to depict. When to use all the colors or when to use a limited palette. Again, it's the same thing. If you use a limited palette, imagine only shades of... Let me take one of these sheets and show you. It's probably easier. Just give me a second. For example, Imagine that you force yourselves to paint exclusively with shades of violet, exclusively. So your whole painting is going to have the mood of violet. Does this make sense to you? Violet will have a very different mood than, let's say, red, which I'm going to show you right now. So if you paint everything only with shades with red, look at the energy and the warmth that your painting will have. It's a huge difference. But if you paint with the violet, it's going to be more nocturnal, more mysterious, and more introvert as well. But like I said before, it really depends on your culture, because colors have different emotional associations according to your culture. This is more in the West. And one thing I would like to complete is, Anis, if you paint with all the colors, imagine a painting that has yellows, blues, greens, everything, you know, grays, browns, you create a huge confusion. And confusion might be what you want to depict. So when I use adjectives like this is confused or this is muddy, it's not a critique. Everything has its place in art. So if you want to express confusion, the more colors, the more confused it will be. But if you want to express the opposite of confusion, if you want to express harmony, then you reduce your palette to only a few highly selected tones that you are going to use. Does that make sense? It's almost like having an orchestra with 50 different instruments playing, or having a concerto where only 4 instruments are playing together and interweaving. It feels more together. So if you have an orchestra that has the trumpets, and then enters the piano, and then the trombone, and then the piano again competing with the trumpets, and then you've got the violins and the flutes, it creates this exuberant, it can be confused if you don't do it well, but it creates a great sense of exuberance. It's the same with color. So if you do a lot of colors put together, it can be quite beautiful in the sense that it's very color rich. I'm thinking of a lot of the late paintings by Monet, for example, where he didn't play much with light and dark. No, he played more with different hues. So he would have blues and oranges and pinks and reds and greens, and that's quite beautiful. But remember, if you want just one single feeling, one single mood, usually it's better to limit your palette and paint only with those selected colors. Now, don't go away yet. I know this is a very long lesson. I was planning to do only, I'm laughing because I was planning to do 20 minutes only. This is embarrassing. We've been gone on for about an hour almost. Don't go away yet. I would like you to type on the comments that what would you like me to teach you next time? I'm going to do another live stream every single Sunday, always at the same time, so you guys can join straight away for next week. And I believe it will be exactly the same link. You can always use the same link, or just come to my wall and the live stream will appear when I go live. What would you like me to teach next week, next Sunday? I'm open for suggestions, and I'm going to read all the comments after this video ends. I'll reply to a few, and then I will try to make videos on questions that were not answered, if that makes any sense. I would also like you to do one thing. If you could tag friends that would benefit from this lesson, if you go on the comments section and just tag them, then they will see the video. When this video ends, they will be able to see it too. Now, I think in terms of questions, it's all done. Yeah. What I'd like to ask you now is definitely visit my website. If you are based in London, so if you live in London or in the surroundings, please go to my website, which is www.nelson/Ferreira.com, my first and last name, and subscribe to my mailing list, because once the coronavirus is over, I will be letting you know about future workshops in London. But I'm going to see you next week. And there is a brand called D'Arte Cor, a fantastic brand made by Lionel Costa. from Portugal, so I'm quite proud of it. And Lionel very kindly has offered all of you a discount. It's a 10% discount if you go to his website. I'm going to post a link below afterwards, but if you want to write it down now, it's Dartecor. So Dartecor. Don't buy your paints yet because there is a code for the discount, which I'm going to supply in the video description. So please watch this video again once it's over, and all the information will be posted on top of the video in the video description. If you have any more questions, I will definitely get back to you on a future series of videos. Okay? Thank you very much, everyone, and thanks for your time and attention. And I'll see you next Sunday at exactly the same time. Bye for now.